Now we are going to open for questions. Remember that you can send us your question just writing on the box on your screen. And we already have one question. The question is from Suzanne Nickel and is from to Jens, Leo and Barbara Fish. Which museums have been involved in the work to open up the GND and fill it with the data concerning museums? Is GND used to cataloging objects? That means the object itself, for example, a steam machine, a car, or a box of for cookies in its materiality? Or is it more used to link to the authority file for the creator or user of the object? That means names of persons and authority file for them.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that question. Yeah, actually, we have been choosing data from different museums, mainly through the German digital library, the Deutsche Digitale Bibliothek, and then specifically data from the German Historical Museum. It is a very good question because it focuses a lot on a spot that is a bit hurting to us, as we are struggling with the definition of the data model concerning objects or works. Because as we have heard in the presentation of Mr. Bruseker today, there's quite a differentiation in between the idea of a work, its manifestation, its different kind of expressions you'll find. So here our data model is still following the librarian point of view, focusing on the first idea of a work, like a manuscript of a book. We will have to work on that further on to make it more feasible for museums as well. What is very important to museums, at least that's our result from the first research program, is all the object headings that are used in the authority files, like let's say epochs as the Renaissance or the medieval time, and how they are classified. Like if we can introduce different thesaurus into the authority file, and we opt more for the a solution that also Mr. Light was referring to. It's better to link different hubs than to put it all into one greater hub. I hope this this gives at least a little answer to your question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Barbara. We don't have any other questions so far, but I have a question for you all. Actually, it's a brief commentary. I think we have great presentations because they, in a way, they were complementary because they're trying to tackle different part of the same bigger problems. It's integration and how we can present better knowledge projects working with such different data. And the question I want to ask you is, do you still see a lot of issues in the way institutions and professionals gather this information or collect this data? In other ways, cataloging standards are still a big issue for us, dealing with such big and complex databases, or this is not a problem anymore, and we are dealing more right now with leaked data issues and machine readable strategies. So if you can elaborate a little bit more about this, I would appreciate. Thank you. We can follow the same order of the presentation if you wanted to respond. So you can start with Anastasiia if you want to share something.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Actually, our project is dedicated on history of all Ukrainian museum town, and it's very big because it's we want to link a huge amount of collection, its material objects, documentations, and all of it needs to do some interpretation because it was very complicated time. So of course it's about linking, and it's also about also sense, and of course for us standards it's very important. It's very important to be on the same page. So we every day actually talking about possibility to use standards. And of course, for us also, it's very important common theory, of course, thematic theory. Is it?
I guess it would be me next. Is that right?
Yes, sorry, George. You want to share something with us?
Well, I just wanted to say, first of all, that all the presentations of the fellow panelists were really good. Thank you for them. And particularly on the point of the question that you made, I think that Barbara and Jens were so clear that like the foundation of proper linked semantic data is human labor, and it's this cataloging work, which is knowing your subject and knowing the possibilities of data structures, I would say. And so I mean, I think I would find it common that, I mean, a real challenge, aside from all the technical stuff, is to connect researchers to knowledge about data structuring, and the fact that they can express their knowledge analytically better than they're aware. And they're limited, they feel more limited by the technology than it is now limited, because we haven't done the job, you know, as a community or in universities or whatever, to communicate the knowledge organization tool set that is necessary to allow them to say, you know, I can make my research analytically rich, and I don't have to truncate it in weird spreadsheets and the limits of my database, but I can really document what I want to document and then express it properly to the world. That would be my take. But I really, yeah, that presentation was so clear on these issues.
Thank you, George. Barbara, you want to share something?
Sure, thanks for that. And I really feel that the presentations we heard today were actually quite a good fragmentation of the whole subject, because we could see that seeing objects from the different angles goes far beyond our natural way of speaking. So we actually need more standards, but standards that are not only developed like for architecture or for art museums or for performance arts or religious art, but bridges the different sections through maybe authority files. At least to us, that seems the most appropriate way to do it, because then you can keep your own data model And also when you reflect on thesauri, you will find that a term that fits well in the next overclass in your thesauri might not follow the same logic in another thesauri, but is still referring to the same word. So in order not to make everything the same, so it becomes all standardized but leveled, it would be better to applicate like a fuzzy logic that enables you to link different concepts through that bridge of an authority file, and then by then help you to identify. And another point I would like to stress, because George just mentioned it's all human labor, using authority files does really ease your job, because you don't have to enter all that data again. You just refer to the data that has been, as Richard said, has been already collected elsewhere. So that really makes your job a little easier, at least.
Thank you, Barbara. Ana Paula, you want to share something with us regarding these issues?
Yes, Gabriel, do you hear me?
Yes.
I apologize for the noise. Thank you for the question. In Brazil, we have many problems with documentation. In my research, I realized the difficulties about the performance art, how they are assimilated, and how we can create possibilities to display not only the actions, but also the documents. That's why it's so important to map existing archives in order to think about how to deal with this data and give it meaning. That is how to establish scales of understanding between the past and the present of the performance remains. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ana Paula. Richard, do you want to share something with us regarding this issue? Richard?
Hi, sorry, I'm getting two different audio streams 5 seconds apart, so
No
apologize.
problem.
Yeah, I think that we have quite a long way to go before, sorry, I was kill this. There we go. Before we actually have a coherent framework for sharing information. I think that there are structural elements and there are data elements, and both of them need attention. So we have the sort of standards for data, which are starting to be seen as commonplace now. So we have linked art, we have CRM, we have Lido, EODEM. Those sort of structural elements, I think, will be very helpful. But then we also have the whole issue of the actual data that we're exchanging. And that is a problem that starts with vocabulary control and then goes on to linked data. It's the same problem. And you have, unless you have that control and that consistency and that shared understanding of the semantics of the items of data that you're working with, you are always going to be struggling. But I've always felt there are two elements to the world of information retrieval. There are the structuralists who try and build things intellectually. And then there's the brute force brigade who basically say that with a computer, you can send an algorithm in and you can power your way through to a brighter future. I think that both have their value. Google have demonstrated that the latter is, you know, at the moment seen as a world-beating way to do things. But I think also the structuralists will, you know, have their day in the sun as well. And I think that's the direction that these sorts of initiatives are actually going in. And, you know, I think we should be aiming to add to the value of the information that museums, libraries, and archives all provide to the public.
Thank you very much, Richard. Marge, I'm sorry, you should talk first, and I went directly to Richard. Can you give us your impressions on this issue?
Sure, also no problem. And thank you to all my other panelists. It was fascinating to hear about your projects. I think I might echo some of what's already been said. To me, I see the issue still being at the capturing and cataloging level. One, as many have mentioned, the human labor of cataloging, I don't think is always reflected in institutions' budgets or organization structures. The materials in the Duchamp Research Portal are the most described things in our archives, and that's only because I literally took 2 years to catalog everything, and it's very rare that people have that kind of dedication to cataloging. And I also think that unstructured data is still hard to figure out how to wrangle. All of that information and context that's in object files and curators' heads, in PowerPoints and notebooks, how do we wrangle that? And even when there are standards, I'll say that even though the PMA and Centre Pompidou both used EAD, there were still local flavors, as in there were differences and nuances to how we applied and used the same fields. So those are just some of my thoughts. Thanks.
Thank you. We have another question from the people watching us, but we have our times a little bit advanced already. I would like to ask Dominic and our organization if we have time for more questions, or we need to close the session.
No, you can still go for a few minutes if you want. No problem.
Oh, thank you, Dominic. So we have another question from Suzanne Nickel. It's to Barbara and to Al if they want to answer. How do you solve the problem of contest when linking authority files in different thesauri? If you have a mono hierarchy, then you need the whole tree to understand the entry. When you only link to the entry, then this tree contest gets lost. So if you can start with Barbara, and if you other presenters wanted to comment also.
Yeah, thanks, Susan, for that question. It's a very good question, as we haven't solved it truly yet. But I think the tendency is towards a poly-branched way to approach it. So if you have like a term, a topic that is used in different thesaurus in a different way or linked to overarched topics, then that means that we will have, let's say, distinguishing the object, like, is the topic now in the realm of architecture, or are we talking about the topic in the realm of construction, for instance, or of design? So then that makes it easier to follow up then its branches in each thesaurus. But sure, this is something we have to further debate, and especially on these topics. Maybe Jens, you would like to say something to that too?
Yeah, that's a good question. You can deal with it in a thesaurus by labeling the term in is it an exact match or is it a close match? That's something that comes to my interest.
Thank you, Jens. And I'm sorry, I didn't ask you the first question. Do you want something? Do you want to add something to this cataloging standard issue?
There's nothing more to add. I think we are all aware of the challenges of the different standards used in libraries, archives, and museums. So yeah, it's a way to find a way to map these, find a mapping between the standards and the formats that are used in the different domains.
Thank you, Jens. Any other comments from our presenters? Do you want to add something?
I'd like to ask a question, taking advantage of having so many skilled people around here. I'd like you to define to you personally, what is the difference for you in between linked data and semantic web? Because we're very often using the two terms almost as synonyms. To me, they aren't, but maybe I'm just a special nerd there, but I'd like to hear your ideas on that.
Thank you, Barbara. Guys, you want to answer Barbara's question?
I mean, I would venture that the semantic data is one step up on linked data because you don't necessarily have any ontology formatting or allowing you to query in a complex way the structured relationships between your linked entities. So, I mean, you can have linked data that's not semantic, but it's not a formal definition, just my impression. Richard?
Thank you, Barbara. Guys, you want to answer Barbara's question?
I can comment if you like. Yeah, I think semantic web was an earlier attempt to specify the ambition to share information. Linked data is much more about the mechanics of using URLs as basically foreign keys into a resource that is somewhere else on the web and which is presenting you with actionable data. So it's a less ambitious project, but arguably a much more practicable one.
Do we have any other comments on that issue? Well, if not, guys, I think we are ready to finish. I'd like to thank you all for the great presentations. And thank you very much for being here. And thank you all for watching us today. Thank you very much.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, thank you for all the coordination.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.